Hello again. Thank you so much for joining me. After my first presentation, I was from the summit. It was the powers of plant medicine and acknowledging Indigenous ways. I just wanted to add a part two to this conversation because healing is such a big, deep process. It takes a lot of courage to make that decision to say, you're going to start working on yourself, right? And it's totally okay if you don't. It's totally okay if you don't get there. I don't ever want people to think that there's this kind of spiritual ambush or this push of righteousness to say that, you need to heal. And if you don't, then you're doing some damage to the world. That's absolutely not the case. Well, not from me anyway. I know there might be some people out there that give that impression, but that's certainly not what I'm doing standing here speaking to you. From me, genuinely, from my heart, having been in a place where my life was so what I thought in my control. I thought I had everything covered. I would be okay if I was just strong enough to handle the things that life was throwing at me. And drinking and medicating in a range of different ways, then that would just get me through. And I didn't see any harm in that. I didn't see the way it was damaging not only my life, but the people in my life around me. The things that I might say because someone has triggered me, or the way I would defend myself, or the actions I would take that I didn't care about the consequences at the time, but they might hurt other people because I was coming from a place of hurt. How they say hurt people hurt people. It's very true. And I know that in my lifetime, I hurt lots of people from the things that I might say, possibly not intentionally at the time, but from just my silliness of just responding to protect myself, right? And that was something that I felt guilty about for a very long time. In my healing process, I had to come to terms with the devils and demons of myself, the shadows in my own space of how I responded to people and the hurtful things that I might have said to defend my own wound, right? To make myself feel safer because that's just now kept that person away. And I had to learn to come to terms with those things because I had to see them as something that I could take responsibility for of myself. I need to forgive myself for being that person because I was really only protecting the wounded version of me, not only the wounded child, but also the wounded teenager and also the wounded adult. All of that wound that I was carrying with me became something I was constantly defending as an adult. And, when you're using alcohol and drugs and all sorts of things that are kind of alleviating the mind of the control, you tend to get a little bit more, I don't know, the protective person that's there to consciously stop you from doing things that you shouldn't do kind of disappears. So all the anger and frustration comes up. Anyway, I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that, life is messy and being a human is hard, and we have challenges and wounds and grief and sorrow and loss and all of these emotions that I had to learn, needed to be released, looked at, hugged and appreciated, and in a way that said that I wasn't a bad person for doing things the way I did. I wasn't, I wasn't to be guilted or shamed into the fact that, I hadn't healed or I hadn't let them go the way I did. I was just doing what I was, what I thought was right. You hold them all in and you don't let anyone know that you're a mess inside, right? And of course, then when I thought that I had gotten to a point where I was okay and manageable, I just found work that I could just work myself to death in. It was kind of like, if I just work 10, 12 hours a day, then that's what I'm focused on. At least I'm being productive and I'm doing something good. So all is well. And, even doing a job that I loved. So all of these things, my point is that all of these things may look, manageable and this is what everyone does. But if you on the inside have a soul and have a part of you that is slowly being destroyed or slowly being eaten away, or there's a part of you that knows that you're not taking care of yourself in a way that you're going to be still able to help others, that you're actually destroying your own self for the purposes of, external validation, wanting people to love you and wanting to look successful, then that's just not the way that your soul wants you to be. And this is my message from this particular platform, I guess, from this video. This is my message because it's all about taking the first steps into saying, well, what can I do to just start unraveling these parts of me that are, feeling scared, feeling pain, feeling like I'm just holding everything together. What are the first little things that I can do just to start taking care of me? And that doesn't have to be some big change. It doesn't mean that you have to become this, crazy spiritual person who's, that changing everything dramatically in your life. So what I mean by that is it's funny how you see in different shows that whenever there's a spiritual person portrayed, they come across as this kind of real pain in the ass kind of person who's always trying to spin a positive light on things, and they're kind of dismissing someone's valid emotions because they're trying to spiritualize it and say, you just have to process it, or the spiritual person's portrayed as this kind of gypsy kind of, crazy lady, or not saying that gypsies are crazy, but you know what I mean. Or, that they're all just, speaking in this ridiculous kind of tone that's, trying to just get you to hold onto a crystal or something. It's always marketed as this kind of Looney Tunes kind of person who has no contact with reality. And they're kind of dismissive of the human person who's struggling and going through some, difficult challenge, and suggesting that, you just have to let it go and it's all light and love. And it's interesting that it's always portrayed like that through media, because that says to me that, one, obviously, it's written by someone who doesn't have a clue, but it's also a fear thing. It's like, if we keep this kind of idea of being in touch with your soul and being connected to something higher than yourself, if we keep that at arm's length and we keep it into this story or this narrative that is really kind of, the kind of person that nobody wants to relate to, then it also stops us from accessing that, or thinking that, we should look into that more and see what that's like, because nobody wants to look like that person, right? I mean, maybe some people are okay with it, but, nobody wants to be that person that's constantly kind of just in the air with their theories and their ideas and dismissive of someone who's having a human challenge. And I say this because I know from my own perspective, as I said in my previous video, I knew from a very young age that there were other beings. I never felt alone in that sense, but I wasn't connected, right? So they were there and I was here, and I wasn't connecting at all. I wasn't going for support or for help. But since doing that, the change for me isn't that I need to change my character and my persona, and that I'm suddenly, judging of other people who aren't. That's more of a religious-based kind of concept. And I think people mix the two, right? Because religion is very judgmental. They kind of have this is our way of doing things, and if you don't do it our way, then, you're going to hell. And that's how that kind of very old dogma is written, and that's what people get attracted to, because they feel safe in that story of rules and ideas of what they can stay within. And that way I'm still like, I'm okay because I'm here, and I'll just stay away from the people who aren't. Whereas being connected and understanding that we're all one, it kind of helps you to release that judgment, because really everyone's just going for the same thing. Everyone's just looking to connect. Everyone's just looking for a family unit or a community of people where they can feel like they've connected to someone. So, the true essence of being someone who can connect to this kind of higher consciousness, and understand it in a way that isn't from your ego, isn't from your I'm better than anyone, or I now have this new power, because everyone is the same. Everyone has the accessibility to connect to this higher consciousness, because it's all a part of us. So if you're truly being in the space of, being able to connect to this consciousness, to this universal power that we all come from, then there's no ability to be judgmental and look at other people in a way that says, well, I'm over here and you're there. The only thing that makes us do that is when we start coming from our unhealed space, from our wounds. And that's okay, because that's the part of the process of stepping into the healing process, right? Now, I don't want to get kind of too far ahead of myself here with this conversation, but I feel like it was really the part that was missing from my first presentation, this idea of healing and the spiritual concept and what can hold us back, as to what I knew held me back. I didn't want people to think that I was just this crazy nut job that I am a bit, but that's okay. I know you're not supposed to use the crazy word, but I say lots of things you're not supposed to say, so I don't really care. But, I've always been kind of, into different things, but I didn't really kind of come out as this person who was, doing what I do now, because because of my wound was what was stopping me. My wound that said I wasn't good enough, I wasn't worthy, that I needed people to like me to feel validated, prevented me from being my true version of myself and being openly able to talk about this kind of stuff, because I knew that it would bump up to a lot of people, right? But I'm okay with that now. I'm totally okay with that now, because I totally understand that the bumping up for other people is just their own stuff. It's just their own version of where they don't feel safe, or it's not their information that they need, or it's not the thing that they want to follow. And that's no judgment. That's fine. But I don't have to take it personally. It's not a personal thing to me anymore. And that's what I wish for everyone, that we can all get to a place where once we get into our wounds, we get into our emotions that we've held in for such a long time, we get into the stuff that holds us back, and we can let go of the lifestyle that we think is keeping us sane, but it's actually holding us back. It's actually only just, barely, white knuckling it. And I don't want people to have to be suffering through that anymore. Now, I know that's not up to me, but that's my message, right? That's why I'm doing this. That's why I did this summit, because this message was so strong for me that I really wanted to, try and find some people with some incredible messages that are, because everyone's different. Everyone's going to resonate with different things. And I know that there are a lot of healers out there going through the same thing, a lot of light workers that are really being urged and pushed into healing their stuff, because the world needs so many of us, right? So, thank you all so much for listening, for engaging, for being a part of this, and for just being curious enough to listen. And I hope that in some way that your soul hears what I'm saying and gets a little kind of thought to say, hey, maybe we could look more into this. maybe we could go to the next step of the healing process. Maybe we could dive into this area over here that's in the shadow, or follow on to one of the speakers and sign up. That's what I really hope for you. Now, something else that I didn't talk too much about that I would like to address is, I mentioned before, obviously, plant medicine isn't for everyone. When I say plant medicine, I should say ayahuasca, psychedelics isn't for everyone, and that's totally okay. But for those of you who are contemplating ayahuasca, psilocybin, they're kind of my two things that I work with. I want to say this to you. There is so much kind of, I guess, trend for ayahuasca and psilocybin, particularly. And there will be a kind of a media trend to start, or there are a lot of people who are going into ayahuasca, and because they're not doing the work in between, that we consider integration, it's almost like they get re-addicted to the ceremony part and not really doing the work in between. So it's kind of like they're replacing their traumas and the things that are helping them cope with the traumas with the ayahuasca process, and kind of connecting that way. So then it's kind of not really helping so much. It's just replacing one thing with another. And it just then becomes another kind of medication, really. Now, I'm saying this because, it's like I said, if you're hearing people, they're like, I'm doing ceremonies every weekend, and, I'm right into this. That's not the space. That's not really how ayahuasca works. Now, there's probably people out there that would disagree with me. That's okay. I'm not sprouting to be any kind of guru in any way, shape, or form. But what I do know is that the integration work, which is the real healing work, that's on you, right? If you start taking something every weekend thinking that that's helping you, then you're missing the point. There is still no escape from you needing to put into practice a different way of living than the way you are in the unhealed version. You can't take the version of yourself and expect to live that same life with the same daily habits and the same daily routine if you're going to be a different person, right? That just doesn't work. That's like saying you want to, lose weight and be really fit, but you want to be able to eat all the things and not exercise. That's kind of the same thing. So that it doesn't work that way. Slowly over time, you don't have to do it overnight, but slowly over time, you need to start changing things. Now, this was really hard for me. I had lots of really bad habits, but slowly over time, I've cut things out. I've swapped them out with better habits. For me, meditating was just like, I would just, But even now, slowly, I'm introducing it to my world, and I'm getting better and better at it. It's not my favorite thing in the world yet, but I've been introducing lots of other different things that might be, whether they're guided meditations or just having some quiet time. Definitely checking in with my guides. We kind of have daily meetings, and just saying that, being able to say that publicly is a huge thing. But it's a necessity for me now because, they know what's going on, and I need to keep in tune with that. But what I'm getting at is the integration part is vital. You come out of a ceremony and it's going to be very different for everyone because it's your own personal space of wherever you're at with healing. And the messages and visions and things that you might get will kind of need to sit with you. You need to unpack them over time, do some journaling, have an integration coach like myself or there's hundreds of others out there, and help someone talk you through the process of what that is. Not give you the messages, because the messages are yours, okay? You don't want an integration coach that's going to tell you what they think it is, because that's not how it works. You really want someone who understands the psychedelic world and definitely how ayahuasca works, because she's, one of a kind. And also someone who understands how mushrooms work, because they're incredibly different beings. But, you know, you want to be able to have someone help you unpack that in a really safe and in your own time. I've been integrating from my last ayahuasca ceremony for, the last one was, well, it's been about 8 months. It's taken me 8 months to integrate from my last big ceremony. And the ones before that, you know, was sort of different. One was like a month, another one was 3 months. But this one's, yeah, it's been a pretty big process to integrate. And, you know, I'm about to, as I mentioned before, I'm about to go to Peru, and I'm going to be there for 3 months in some very intense training. But that's a little bit different. And that will be completely different again. So that's why I've needed to integrate as much as I can. But like I said, it is different for everyone. I felt like I needed to have this bigger conversation with you as I get better at sharing my thoughts and my teachings and what I've learned, but also from my heart, what I really feel is important for anyone in the space where they're looking to change either the dark space that they're in or the dark space they've been in, or, you know, someone who's just trying to take those first steps into looking at their stuff, because I know how scary it is and daunting, right? So yeah, that's kind of my part two. That feels like all that really wants to come through right now. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here and listening. And I would love to hear your thoughts and your comments, and what comes up for you, you know, when you're listening to these kinds of words. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you so much. And yeah, if you've watched this, and again, I think I've mentioned it a few times, but my webinar that's coming up in May, a few weeks from this summit, in case you're listening to this outside of the summit, I think it's the last few weeks in May 2023. So yeah, if you are wanting to learn more about ayahuasca and psychedelics, then please join me on that webinar. I would love to chat more with you. Okay, thank you so much for listening. Mwah. Big love to all, and yes, please take care of yourself. Thank you.